What's up everyone, it's Q from Retro Q Gaming, and I want to open this video just by prefacing it that we all know, if you're familiar with my channel, that I have a Nintendo Switch. I do enjoy my Nintendo Switch and I play it pretty damn frequently. So having said that, this video is probably going to come off extremely negative to some people, but realistically, I'm just being objective about it, and yes, while it is critical, I feel like all the things I'm going to mention are valid criticisms. So while I do like Nintendo and I do like my Nintendo Switch and I'm enjoying it for the most part, the problem is the overall, not just perception, but basically what is actually happening to the Nintendo Switch and for the Nintendo Switch. So I don't like Electronic Arts. I don't like EA. They've ruined many of my favorite game franchises and many of my favorite game studios. Now, having said that, naturally I didn't watch last night's E3 presentation for EA because they don't do anything I enjoy anymore, so I skipped it. Having said that, I did read one or two articles because naturally they're everywhere today. So I did read a little bit just on what they had to say because they didn't have anything to say about stuff I actually wanted. I wanted to see what they could actually say in regards to stuff that I kind of know about. In this sense, because EA are so far only bringing one game to the Switch, FIFA, I wanted to look into the actual FIFA details and if they had said anything to do with the Switch version or if they said anything to do with Nintendo. Now, for those of you out there who don't know as well, I don't care for football whatsoever. I don't hate football, I just don't like it. Football just, it doesn't exist to me, basically. It just whizzes right by me and I don't care. Now, I realize getting a FIFA game on the Nintendo Switch is obviously a good thing because FIFA is probably the biggest franchise in the world, and football being the biggest sport in the world, it's naturally an attractive prospect to have a FIFA game on the Nintendo Switch. Now, of course, once I started reading a bit about it, you find out a bit more about what features are cut out. For example, they have that new cinematic story mode, or not so much new, but the cinematic story mode from the previous game is removed from the Switch version, and because of the hardware limitations and the actual engine that the game uses, the Frostbite engine, and its incompatibility with the Nintendo Switch, obviously it is a different version based on that. But the big thing that really was so telling for me was not the features being removed, was not the different engine, but it's how EA have announced they publicly perceive the Nintendo Switch. Because they're advertising the Nintendo Switch version and they're referring to the Nintendo Switch version of FIFA as the most advanced portable version of FIFA. Now, we don't know what other versions are going to come out. For all we know, there could be a 3DS version, there could be a PlayStation Vita version, although I doubt it, there could be a mobile version. We don't know, or at least personally I don't know, because I don't keep up with FIFA. As I said, football is just, it might as well not exist to me. So that is in respect to how they look at FIFA, sorry, not FIFA, but how they look at the Nintendo Switch. They basically classify it as a portable and no more. And given what we know about EA and what they're going to be doing at the moment, with the fact that they're only launching one game on Nintendo Switch for the foreseeable future, which is obviously FIFA, that kind of lends credence to that belief. So we've seen something like this before. We've seen it along the lines of when the games would come out on, let's say the 360 and PlayStation 3. They didn't come out on the Wii, or at least they very, very few and far between came out on the Wii. And then, of course, as the console life cycle progressed, the Wii just faded off. Sure, the Wii had a whole rake of sales and millions of titles sold, but they were all shovelware. They were all smaller games, they were all lesser known games, obscure games, no-name games. You didn't have your big games coming out on it. You didn't have your huge Assassin's Creeds, you didn't have your huge, you didn't have your Borderlands, you didn't have your Destiny, whatever it is. The fact is, they did not make an appearance on the Nintendo Wii. Now, there's only one place to blame for this. And as I said, this is going to sound very critical, but it's Nintendo. Now, I was originally going to go into a different version of how I was going to explain from this part of the video onwards, but earlier today I made a post on a forum And this forum was in relation, it was on a Nintendo forum, and the post was in a topic dedicated to, or well, started by Switch owners who were feeling more and more dejected and more left out and left behind by the Nintendo Switch. Many of them specifically commenting on seeing all these new games and new trailers being announced and updated trailers of existing games in development, which were all notably absent for a Nintendo Switch version. So many of them were feeling dejected, and they wanted to say, hey, 3 months into my console's life cycle, and I'm already fearing a Wii U 2, or I'm already fearing a Wii 2, because, as I said, the Wii didn't get its... It got a lot of third-party support, but it didn't get the big games, which is what the majority of people are worried about. Because as it is at the moment, sure, Nintendo have come out and said, oh, we have all these dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of developers working on games for the Switch, but they are all spin-off or lower-end titles, or no-name titles. They are not the AAA games that are generally required for the widespread audience and to gain public traction for the console. Now, there are, of course, one or two exceptions to that. Look at the Wii, for example. It was billed as a casual console, and the soccer moms bought the whole thing. But that's beside the point. So, what I'm going to do is I made a pretty lengthy post, basically expanding on what I was going to say here originally, but I'm going to read it to you now anyway. And just remember, real quick, even though I am being very critical of Nintendo and the Nintendo Switch, I do enjoy it, and I feel like I'm looking at it objectively. So, here's what I had to say anyway. If you bought a Nintendo Switch, even back in 2016 when the rumors all pointed to the same thing of hardware, let alone October reveal, expecting AAA games, you have yourself to blame. As harsh as that may come off, it's not a personal attack, but once we first saw the hardware in that 3-minute trailer, the 3-minute teaser trailer in October, it was absolutely 100% apparent what the limitations would be. Publishers and developers are not to blame. Nintendo is. There is a reason more powerful hardware came out in 2013 to replace the two major consoles. It isn't rational to expect developers to continue holding back their games just to allow them to fit on significantly less powerful hardware. Like it or not, the Nintendo Switch is underpowered. It is marginally more powerful than a Wii U, which was marginally more powerful than the 360 and PlayStation 3, which, by the way, launched 8 and 7 years before them, respectively. And it launched 4, or 3.5 when you look at it, years after the competition in the form of the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. So, Nintendo have a history of this. Nintendo stuck with an archaic design on the Nintendo 64. Cartridges. We all know how that ended. Nintendo went with an inferior design choice on the GameCube. Mini DVDs. We know how that ended. Nintendo went with inferior hardware overall on the Wii. It's the same situation with third-party support as it is now on the Nintendo Switch. You won't get your AAA games, you'll get a lot of shovelware. Nintendo went with inferior hardware on the Wii U. Every publisher and developer left them behind. There's a pattern here, and the Nintendo Switch is looking to continue this on. Unrealistically underpowered in the age that it launches in, Nintendo are the only ones to blame. I dislike EA more than almost every other company out there, and I don't buy their games, but I won't deny they push technology. To incorporate the Nintendo Switch into their main games and main game engines, the overall floor would have to be lowered, which in turn also lowers the overall ceiling of what can be achieved. Are EA, or any publisher in theory for that matter, going to do this when they have a market of 25 million Xbox Ones, 55 million PlayStation 4s, and hundreds of millions of PC users? No, and it's completely unrealistic to expect that. As I mentioned, I have a Nintendo Switch since day one. I love it, but I'm being 100% realistic about it. I knew going in that it would be a Wii U 2 for me, in the sense that it's for Switch exclusive games, not for AAA games or multi-platform games. This might scorn Nintendo-only gamers, but as the minority, they sadly do not count to these companies. They made the choice of what company to support and what company to back, and when it comes to big AAA games or large third-party support, they made the wrong choice. Sure, we'll have amazing games like Breath of the Wild, Mario Kart, Mario Odyssey, etc. I'm certainly not denying that, but making the Switch as a choice Most Nintendo gamers and fans ignore the rest of the industry as it leaves them behind and blames everyone else but the company who is at fault, Nintendo. So that's overall the post I made, which I pretty much feel sums up my entire feelings about the entire situation. And I will factor in a little bit of what I was going to say originally as well. So let me put it this way for you. People who are defending this situation and they are blaming absolutely the entire industry except for Nintendo. Let me put it to you this way. It's not EA's fault FIFA doesn't run properly with full features on your Nintendo Switch. It's not EA's fault Battlefield doesn't run on the Nintendo Switch. It's not EA's fault Battlefront doesn't work on Nintendo Switch. It's not EA's fault that Anthem, the new BioWare game, doesn't work on Nintendo Switch. It's not EA's fault Mass Effect and Dragon Age don't work on Nintendo Switch. It's not Square Enix's fault that Final Fantasy 15 doesn't run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Square Enix's fault Kingdom Hearts 3 doesn't run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Square Enix's fault that Final Fantasy 7 does not run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Square Enix's fault that Hitman does not run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Square Enix's fault that Tomb Raider will not run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Ubisoft's fault that Assassin's Creed will not run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Ubisoft's fault that Splinter Cell won't run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Ubisoft's fault that Ghost Recon won't work on Nintendo Switch. It's not Ubisoft's fault that Watch Dogs 2 does not run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Capcom's fault that Dead Rising 4 doesn't run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Capcom's fault that Resident Evil 7 does not run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Konami's fault that Metal Gear Solid 5 does not run on Nintendo Switch. It's not CD Projekt Red's fault that Witcher 3 does not run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Activision's fault that Destiny 2 does not run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Bethesda's fault that Doom does not run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Bethesda's fault that Fallout 4 does not run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Bethesda's fault that Wolfenstein does not run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Blizzard's fault that Overwatch does not run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Rockstar's fault that Red Dead Redemption 2 does not run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Rockstar's fault that Grand Theft Auto 5 does not run on Nintendo Switch. It's not Gearbox's fault that Borderlands 3 does not run on Nintendo Switch. And there's a reason why I left Borderlands 3 to the end there. For the simple reason is the hardware in the Nintendo Switch is a standard base Tegra X1 from Nvidia, which is underclocked, which means made slower than the base version of the chip. Now, the reason why I mention that is because the standard version of the X1 in the Nvidia Shield will run Borderlands 2. It will run it decently well. It won't run it perfectly, but it will run it decently well. If the standard version of that chip struggles with Borderlands 2, what would an underclocked version of that chip do with Borderlands 2? Let alone Borderlands 3, which is going to be obviously much newer, much bigger in scope. Sure, it'll use a newer engine, but there's going to be so much pared back. And we already know that Gearbox have announced that Borderlands 3 will not be coming to Nintendo Switch. So that's it. I'm going to leave the video there. I feel like I've gotten my point across, and once again I just want to reiterate that I am not completely attacking Nintendo. This is designed to be a critical look at EA and other publishers and how they see and treat the system because of what it is. I feel I've been pretty fair in that aspect and pretty realistic in that aspect. Sure, there's probably a bunch of Nintendo fanboys out there who are thumbing me down and leaving all sorts of hate in the comment section. Good for them, I don't care. But anyway, let me know what you think about the Nintendo Switch in the comment section below. Do you think it's being treated fairly? Do you think it's publishers and developers' fault of how they have to treat it? Or do you think it's Nintendo's fault? What's the deal with it? Let me know all of that in the comment section below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the rest of the videos in my channel.